Vanessa Konecki, and this is Stop Shitting All Over Yourself, a show to remind you that you do know what you're doing and you are enough, just as you are. Each episode, I connect with an incredible human being who has walked the path that you're on. The path that leaves other people's expectations for who you're supposed to be and the decisions that you're supposed to make by the wayside. To replace those ideas with a blueprint for your life that you design. These stories will inspire you, and their tactics will help you to lay the bricks on the road to a happier and more joyful you. As always, thank you so much for listening. And if you're on YouTube, drop a like or subscribe to get all the feel-good content from Vanessa TV. And now, let's listen in as I have a conversation with Nancy Medoff, best-selling author of the book Unmute Yourself, Speak Up to Stand Out, keynote speaker, podcast host, and a role model for anyone who's trying to find their voice and stand up for themselves in corporate America. She has had such a busy 2023. I am so thrilled she was able to join us to talk about her philosophies on using rest and recovery to build resilience, which is in sharp contrast to our hustle culture today. In this conversation, we dove into some serious shit, not the least of which is revisiting work's dominance in our culture and in our worth. Let's listen in and see what she said. It is so good, and it's all about understanding how important rest is in our lives.
So, this is a great segue. So, I'm getting ready for a keynote, and it's a newer topic for me. It's authentic leadership, which I can speak on that, and resilience. And when I do a keynote, like, I'm not going to get up there and make shit up. I need to do the research. So I'm doing the research, and I'm like, okay, resilience, blah blah blah. And what I found recently, now this is not, I just found this like this week, is that, and this is a Harvard Business Review study, that people think about resilience and they think about grit, like in the Marine Corps and the grit and the grind, and it's actually not. Truly resilient people, they recover. I was going to say rest. They recover. So if you're in the performance zone, you need to give as much time in the recovery zone. And this article talks about facts and data that supports that. And I think about that, and I'm like, I thought about this story because I used to travel a lot more than I do now. I still travel a lot. And I remember I would be on the plane, right, Vanessa? And I would get on, Wi-Fi, my drink, right? So this gets better, right? So then I'd be like, they'd be like, turn off your laptop. And I'd be like, okay, just one more second, right? And then I would close my laptop. I would get in the cab, and I would boot up my laptop again, and I would use my phone. I'd use the Wi-Fi from my phone to send out all the emails. And I'm like, what are you doing? And I remember I was talking to a friend, and she said, I don't remember what the context was, but what I heard was she reads on the plane, like casual reading.
like nonfiction, like fiction.
Fiction.
Yeah.
She checks her bag, which I thought was interesting, and I'll get to that in a second. And she did one more thing. So I remember I was like, wow. So I took a flight, and I'm like, I'm not going to do any work. And it was awesome. It was like, imagine the 2.5 hours, you can't be reached, you're not working, or 3 hours, whatever. And I read, I caught up on magazines, whatever, and I started thinking about how am I going to thrive on the road? I want to thrive on the road, because I was on the road all the time. So I started doing that, and that, in essence, is the recovery piece. I mean, it was interesting. It was interesting. Like, I used to go to Vegas. And I would take the most possible quickest flight out of there that I could. So if the trade show ended at 3, I'd be on a 5 p.m. flight out. Red eye, fine, just get me home. And then I'm like, why am I doing this? So I started staying, and I would book a spa appointment, 4 days on my feet in a row at a trade show. And then I'm getting on the plane. I'm sleeping on the plane. It might be delayed. I get back home. I'm not resting when I get home, dealing with everything at home. I'm like, nope. So I invited some friends who were there at the conference with me, and I'm like, let's stay an extra day. Let's have a nice dinner and go to the spa. So we did, and then the next morning I would get on a plane, and I would use my company's time to fly home. Like, why am I sacrificing my sleep to get home? It's It's interesting. So then this many years later for me to read and realize as I'm doing this research that resilience is tied to recovery.
Yeah.
I'm like that makes a shit ton of sense.
You know what else makes a lot of sense? Actually, you said that as like I had this moment, right? Okay, so think about this. Human body. If you're going to go and work out, you're never going to work out 5 days in a row the same muscle constantly doing higher and heavier weights, because any trainer, we all know that that's a surefire way to injure yourself physically and get you to a point where you can't work out for months, where you need surgery, right? And what's interesting is I think that for the last several decades, I would say that like several decades ago, the conversation about work started where we were all like working, 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 and so on. But at the time, there was no internet. So we were able to clock out and leave and go. But work was still very important and paramount. Now with the internet coming, right, and with us being able to work from home, and like you said, get in the car, tether to your hotspot, get on the plane, you can actually have a completely uninterrupted time of working, right? And if you think about your brain as also a muscle, what you're essentially doing is just constantly working your brain. And when I talk to my sister, I call it like my brain being parched, because like eventually what happens is my brain starts to feel almost like I've dried it out and it's like desiccated. But I'll keep going because I don't do this anymore, but for years I would just keep going, keep working. And it's for some reason I thought that, well, the brain was an exempt muscle, right? Or that's not, and I don't know what I was actually thinking, but whatever it was that was happening, the actions that I was taking were saying my mental health, my physical health, nothing is as important as getting this email out to someone. So I feel like that's also something like to question when you say like, why do we do that? It is, I asked somebody the other day, I said, why are you on this earth? Are you on this earth to send that email? And they're like, actually, I'm not, but my kid needs me right now. I'm like, then fucking don't send the email and go talk to your kid.
And think about what you missed. That's your point. Like that's what you're saying. So so you're gonna miss a moment with your child to get the work done or whatever the case may be. This was not that profound. I was in the taxi in Chicago when I was there a couple weeks ago, and I wasn't on my phone because I hadn't been back in a while. So and I love it. Lakeshore Drive, driving by Lake Michigan, it just all these memories. It was just a remarkable experience because I loved the time that I lived there. And I purposely didn't look at my phone, and I took it all in, and I'm like, okay, I remember this, and I remember walking over here, and I remember hanging out with my friends over here, and when I trained for the marathon, I remember this spot and all this stuff, and I would have missed all that. Think about what you're missing. Think about what you're missing.
And those feelings are so great, right? Because like when you look at, you got your, because every time you saw it, you get your serotonin and your endorphins. You're like, oh yeah, right? But like, and on our phones, which I don't have with me, let's pretend this is my phone, it's the dopamine hit, that I'm looking for. There's, oh look, I did the work. There's also, I think, another element of it for many people, which I think that at some point we've done enough emotional mental work with therapists and coaches and so on to be able to like divorce ourselves from this, but it does take a lot of work, is this idea that the purpose of being resilient is so you can work more, right? Ultimately all the things that we're doing is so that we can work more. And so I feel like that's the other question, is what are you being resilient for exactly? So actually I'm curious about that. As you were doing your research, is there any question that you're asking, is like, what are we being resilient for?
It's interesting. In this particular case, this company wants to train their employees how to be more resilient. So the question is, well, do you want them to be resilient so they can thrive, or do you want them to be resilient so they can work more? That's one question. I just had it. It was on the tip of my. I just had it.
Oh, I hate it when that happens. When you're like, literally, the words are there.
That's what I mean. Like there's so much in my brain. Oh, so there's this book that I just bought. Of course, I forget the name of it. And it's about aging. It's an Oprah book. I'll find it while we're talking. But so, what are you being resilient for? Was your question. For me, it's so I can live longer. Like at this point, I don't want to recover. I'm not focusing on recovering so that I can work more, or so that I can, be there for my kids. I'm working on recovery because I want to take care of my body and my mind. Because the older you get, the more you realize you don't you can't make first of all, you don't have as much time to make it up. Second of all, your body starts behaving your body starts behaving the way it should based on how you're treating it. So like when I was in my 20s, if I like, had a week, whatever, a week where I ate like I was on death row, I'd be like, okay, I'll have some tab cola and salad for 3 days and I'll lose 10 pounds and everything will be fine. I'll be back to normal. I can't do that anymore. And the more crap I put in my body or the more sleep that I lose because I was binging on Netflix, that I'm never going to get that sleep back. And it affects me even more the older I get. So the recovery for me is about being my best self physically and mentally. I have to recover.
Yeah.
I had a friend that came to visit a couple days ago, and for whatever reason, I go for a walk every morning, and I didn't get my walk in. And he showed up at noon, and he said, I want to go into town. And I said, so I need to take my walk. You can, if you want fun, energetic, engaging Nancy, you'll go for this walk with me, or you'll give me this time to go for the walk. If you want Nancy that's going to be irritable, sluggish, and like, catty, demand that I go into town with you, because I'm telling you right now, if I don't go for my walk, it's going to affect me mentally and physically. So I kind of went down a rabbit hole there, but I think that to me, that's the importance. It's how am I going to thrive? And I know that I need to walk, or I know that I need to get sleep, or I know that I need to, watch the junk food if I've been having 3 or 4 days in a row of junk food. It's the boundaries that you create with yourself that you don't keep, that, you don't have the same forgiveness that you had when you were in your 20s. You don't.
I want to first say you said you went down a rabbit hole, but you kind of actually needed to go down that rabbit hole for me, just as an FYI. I needed to hear what you said. You had a script that you used where you were talking about your friend and you're saying, okay, if you want to get this Nancy, come on the walk with me. If you want to get this Nancy. And I actually I've struggled with you're so good with scripts, guys. I should actually, hold on. We got to just pull this out just to be on the safe side because we want to make sure we're promoting it. Yeah, okay. So good with scripts. This has got a lot of scripts in it, guys. Make sure you get Nancy's book. That's how I found her. But, because I have boundaries and then I'm bad about keeping them with myself for sure sometimes. But then other times I'm also bad. I'm worse with it when there's someone else involved because then I'll be like, well, I don't want to make them feel bad. I don't know how to say the thing. But like having that language that you just said, it's such great. And it's so simple when you said it. I was actually thinking to myself, I was like, God, that's so simple. Why didn't I think of that? But you said it and I was like, I'm so glad you said it because now I have those words. I never would have thought of it because I'm not very good at coming up with scripts, but I'm really good at using them when I have them. So thank you for going down that rabbit hole. But to your point about, being your body not treating you the same way, it's so funny because when I was I was a bouncer at the Paradise for a couple of years.
Oh my God, the Paradise Rock Club.
Yes, I worked there for a couple of years. Fabulous. In fact, one of my dear friends, Bill, is the manager there. It's fabulous. Wait, you know Bill Guerra?
This isn't Billy Budd, is it? Did you know Billy
Oh
Budd?
my God, you know Billy Budd too? Oh my
So
God.
Billy
No,
Budd-
it's not Billy Budd, but I freaking love Billy Budd.
Billy Budd has the seats next to me. I used to be a Patriots season ticket holder, and he has the seats next to me.
You are kidding. That is so amazing.
He's a wild man. I love him.
What a small world. I know, right? He's great. So this, what's small? This is really, this is one of the reasons why I love, I love having been in Boston for so long, is that now we get to this space where like you can bring up somebody and someone else knows it, and I'm like, damn, I do live here.
Yeah.
But when I did work at the Paradise, I was a drunk. I drank all the time, partied all the time. I was, you're in a rock club, and I could easily, I would drink till God knows what time in the middle of the night. And then drive home, wake up at 5, go to work, and I could do this for 4 or 5 days in a row and just, eat the McDonald's and recover, and it's fine. Yep. Now, if I so much as wake up 30 minutes earlier than I need to, it's all over.
It's so funny. I saw this meme the other day. It's like the things you hated as a kid are now what you want the most, like sleep, healthy food, like
naps.
Naps, right? It's so funny. It's so funny. Yeah.
I saw that meme that said, like, when I was younger, I said I'm going to go to bed anytime I want. I'm going to keep my own bedtime. And now that I'm older, my bedtime is 8 o'clock.
Me too. That's one of my, I can't remember if we did it on the podcast if it was first. this Thrive list, which is what I pull out when I feel myself getting a little edgy or starting to feel overwhelmed. And I'm actually going to print it out. It's bed by 9, like not sleeping, but in the bedroom by 9 o'clock. 8 o'clock is a bonus, but by 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Upstairs, my phone goes in the kitchen. I do not bring my phone into the bedroom with me. And it's bed, but it just even just in the room, it could be like I'm reading a book, or I don't have a TV in my room either, or chatting, on the not the phone, chatting with my husband or whatever. But that's one of the big ones. It's one of the big ones.
Can I ask you about this? Because you did bring it up earlier when we were talking before the podcast, and I think it's such a great idea. I'm glad that you brought it up again. Can you tell me a little bit about what is this Thrive list and how do you use it?
Yeah. I actually, shocking, I have a tool for it that I'm happy to give you that you can give to
Please
your
do.
listeners. So, okay, many years ago for the new year, my word was thrive. And I made a vision board and it was awesome. And thrive, the word thrive was in the middle of it, and then it had all these pictures about what that meant to me. And it was in my office, and every day I would walk by it, and I loved it. Later that year, coincidence maybe, I was interviewed by Thrive Global magazine, right? Like, I mean that's like,
That's
I was
amazing.
like, whoa. So it's what do I need to do? Thrive is, I don't want to live, I want to thrive. I want to thrive on the road, I want to thrive at home, I want to thrive. So, and every year, the reason I'm telling you this is because every year I go to pick a new word, and I never like my new word. I always go back to thrive. So I'm done.
Is that why you didn't pick a word this year?
I couldn't find, I'm like, nothing is better than thrive. So then that is, I mean, I might even get a little necklace made or something like that. Cause I love it. I just think it's such a great word. I just think it's such a great word. Like you're not just here, you're thriving. So when I'm not thriving, when I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed out, or I'm like snappy turtle or whatever, I'm like, okay, I need to go back to what I know that I do, my habits, my behaviors that will get me back to who I am when I'm thriving. So it could be journaling every day. I make my own journal. And I print it out at FedEx, and I make it, and I might change it based on what's going on in my life for that month, but I do it every month. It could be, something as simple as a cup of turmeric tea, right? Like that brings me down. There's something very soothing about that. Not chamomile, not one of the other ones. It's always this one turmeric tea. It's the golden turmeric tea. I don't know if you've ever had it. It's so good.
I have not, but I love turmeric, so.
It's great. It could be, and it's nothing big. It could be watch a sunrise, watch a sunset. I'm trying to think of what else is it. Early to bed, drinking water, So I'll be like, okay, and it's literally a list, and it's typed up. I mean, I could pull it up right now. I'll try to find it, but and I pull it out, and I'm like, okay, pick 3 things from this list today, or pick 1 thing from this list today, or put it, maybe. Whoops, sorry, just dropped my mic. Maybe it's something as simple as, sorry, that's not very thrive-ish. Maybe it's something as simple as, okay, if you can't do any of these things today, at least have it on your desk. At least have it on your
Right.
desk so that there's an awareness around it. I can't find it. I'm not going to keep trying to do it.
Oh, no,
So, so what I did was, I don't know if you can, there's this big thing up on my screen right now.
I can't see the big thing, but I'm assuming it means you can't see me anymore, and so it's like weird because you're talking to.
Here we are. We're back. And we're back. So what I did was I put together it's a sheet of paper, and at the top it says Thrive List, and then there's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if somebody wants it, I give it out. It's free, obviously. I'm like, just download it, create your own. I do a workshop called Thriving in a Hybrid Environment. And that's one of the things that we do is I say, what are the things that, like, I'll ask you, what do you do that brings you back to your best self?
While you were talking, I was thinking about it because this list is so good. I was already thinking about like what are the things I'd put on this list for myself, and one of them is going outside and taking like a really, because I live right by the water, taking like a really deep inhale and like doing like a bunch of breaths where I'm really breathing, because I find that when I'm not thriving, I'm in my body a lot and I can feel everything just feels unpleasant. So that's the first one. I think the other one would probably be snuggling with my dog. Like that's a really good one, doing snuggling with my dog or with my wife. Like either they both smell really good and then like and I'm very pheromone driven. So like
Yeah.
having those pheromones like really calms me down. It's the smell. Like and then the reason why I brought that up is because it's not just cuddling. I have to like inhale,
Oh,
there
that's
and
great.
it's like, oh,
That's
okay,
great.
there's safety
Yeah.
there. So a lot of
Yeah.
smelling, I guess. There's a lot of smelling involved
Sensory.
in
A
my
lot of
thriving.
sensory. Yeah. So for
Yeah,
you,
I'm
it's
very
sensory.
sensitive. Look at what we're learning about me today. It's like you're my therapist.
Glad to be here. Happy to help. Happy to help. Yeah, I mean, everybody, breathing is, I don't even think it's on, I don't think breathing is, but meditation is.
Yeah.
So, during COVID, during the quarantine, um, I was the most peaceful, calm, and centered that I have ever been in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that, of course, was that there was literally no demands on me, none.
Yeah.
I couldn't leave my house. But some of it was every morning and every night I did a meditation. It was a guided meditation. I did yoga every day. It was, I was walking around in nature. It was all the stuff that you should do, but you don't make the time to do. I had all the time to do it. So,
Yeah.
I want to get back to that. I want to get back to, I was so thriving in the middle of this pandemic that you know I want to get back to it. I want to get back to some of those things. Like I
Yeah.
can't, obviously I have a life and I have commitments, but that's the other thing I do, by the way. One of the things on my Thrive list is cancel some appointments because I overschedule
That
myself.
is so good. That is a really good one. Oh my god. I that one's going on my list because that's something that people so actually I'm curious, right? Cuz Nancy, you also probably have the same problem. At a certain level but not like level, but like at a certain stage of your career, everybody wants to talk to you all the time. And you always have appointments, you always have like there's just always stuff
Yeah,
happening.
yeah,
And there's a desire to do that, but there's a difficulty, I think, in terms of like we can give all of ourselves away until there's like nothing left. Now I'm going to the doctor and I've got a meeting with this person and I've got a podcast and I've got this, right? And like now it's just nonstop. So I'm curious to know like how do you balance that
so I
with
don't take any meetings on Fridays or Mondays.
okay,
I just
that's a
don't.
good
That's
one.
a hard boundary that I will not break.
Okay.
Because Mondays, I call it Mindset Monday. I didn't leave my corporate job. Now, I have the luxury of doing that because I work for myself. I
Yeah.
didn't leave my corporate job to get up Monday morning and start grinding. Like, I want to ease into my week. And the best way I can do that is to have a free day where I can say, okay, what are my priorities for the week? Blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah, 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 blah. Fridays, every now and then I'll have a meeting on a Friday. But again, I didn't build my business to be grinding Friday so that then I like leave my desk in a huff because it's the weekend and I come back and it's a shit show,
Yeah.
or I'm thinking about it all weekend. So that's one thing I do. Frankly, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, I'm right now I'm overscheduled, but I have an awareness, like, and we were talking about this earlier. I know I'm overscheduled now, so I'll probably block some pockets of time next week so people can't book appointments with me. I'll get back to blocking some time out. I canceled an appointment for tomorrow. I asked for a little bit of a lag today. I was late for a call. I said, can we start this call 10 minutes later? Because I needed those 10 minutes. It's tough. It's self-inflicted. Like,
Yes.
it's self-inflicted. I'm in charge of my own time. So what's my problem?
Do you feel bad when you so like if you're like because like I really one of the things again that this is I and every time sometimes words will come out of your mouth and I'm like this is why I love her so much, right? Is like it's because you have very good boundary language. You have really good boundary language and like in not just boundary language in like scripts, but in ways that help me to like reframe the way that I think about something, right? So for me, when you're like, I'm going to be 10 minutes late or like, I have to cancel appointments. If I was to do that, I would feel, oh, I'm letting that person down and blah, 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 right? There's a story in my head. Can I ask you what story that you tell?
Yes. So the story that I tell is they're not going to care. And in fact, they might want the time back too.
Yeah.
Usually, if I'm like, hey, I know we had a call set, like let's say today, hey, I know we had a call set up. I'm not at my best, and I think it'd be a lot better if we moved it to next week. Wouldn't you be psyched to have an hour back in your day?
Oh yeah, totally. And you know what? That's so true. I've never once said to anyone, or no one has ever said to me, I need to cancel, and me be like, God, you're such an asshole. It's always like, thank God I have an hour back. Oh shit, I would have enjoyed talking to you, but you know what? I'll talk to you next week then,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yep. Yep.
it's not a thing for me, but when I do it, I turn it into a thing for me. So I think the key is to like flip that script and recognize that just because I'm doing it doesn't change the nature of it. It's still the same. Nobody cares. It's fine.
Well, nobody cares, and you're doing them a disservice if you show up half-assed.
Yeah,
So,
that's good.
and I have said things like, you know what, I have a lot going on and my head's not in the game. I think it would be better if we postponed it. This is on me. I want to show up the best that I can for you, and that's just not going to happen this week. And they're like, great, thank you. They respect it. They're grateful. Like, well, thank you. Like, have you ever been on a call with someone and you're like, why do they have a bug up their ass? Like,
Right, or why are they even here?
right, like, and it wasn't, I'm sure it had nothing to do with you. I'm sure that they had
Right.
a million things going on. Maybe that, so it's more about, again, thriving and being at your best.
Yeah.
And if that means that I ask if we can move it, I mean, if I had called you, would you have been mad? No.
No, I would have been fine. I'd be like, yeah, no big deal. It's fine.
Right.
In fact, I usually check 10 to 15 minutes beforehand to make sure. Like yesterday, I had a scheduled, and one of my podcast guests unfortunately had a tragedy in their family, and I was like, and they felt so bad, and I was like, what is wrong? Don't feel bad. Like, this is totally fine. You know, it's actually, I want to actually throw something else out there, because as you were talking, I was listening, and what I heard is in my mind was trust the people that you work with, right? And it made me think to myself that I have worked hard, as you have, I would imagine, to surround yourself with the kind of people who will help you thrive. And so chances are that any of the people that you reach out to say this will all be in that same mindset, so it'll be like no big deal. Let's say you had messaged me and I'm like, Nancy, you are so unreliable. You would be like, I am literally never talking to Vanessa again. Like, this is not someone I want in my life.
Well, and that's a good point because, I'm trying to think, it is possible that, like, let's say today you could have been like, oh, you know what, Nance, I really wanted this to go out next week. This is the only time I have. And then I would probably say, okay, get your game face on. Like,
Yeah.
you tried. It's not always going to work. You tried. And yes, because I trust you and I trust that if it was okay, you would have said, no, let's do it next week.
Yeah.
The only exception to that is usually if it's a client. I
Fair.
probably,
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, I wouldn't do that to a client. They're paying me and I need to respect that. And also at the same time, I set really clear boundaries with my clients. So when I do a speaking gig, this is interesting. So this is for consultants, coaches, speakers. I will put in my contracts, here's the speaking engagement, 90 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever. Included is one hour session to happen at least 2 weeks prior to the event. One hour planning session or 30-minute planning session. And then when they say, hey, can we talk to you again and again and again and again and again? I'm like, okay, guys, so we have one session. So let's focus on that. And that's all I can commit to at this time. Like, as a coach, consultant, or speaker, all you have is your time. So
Yeah.
if you have somebody that isn't used to the process or doesn't really know how to do it or isn't really organized or whatever might be going on at their company, that's unfortunate. I can't spend 6 hours pre-planning with you because that's money out of my pocket.
Right.
And that's not what we agreed to.
And I think that, and that makes a lot of sense. I've spoken with, in interviewing a bunch of speakers, I think that the one of the things that sort of sets seasoned speakers apart is the ones who will put the boundaries around it, because like I think that one of the things that can happen as a speaker is that like you're the expert, right? And I've hired you now to speak at my event, but wait, I have all these other things that I really need to know, and as long as we're having this conversation, I may as well just throw these in there, right? So a conversation that's supposed to take an hour can take longer because we could keep getting derailed because they're not sure how to do the thing. So I think part of that has to be, like you're saying, recognizing when you're the expert and you have to be the one to set the boundaries. I think here's what's interesting about that, right? Because like we've been raised in a culture that says the customer is always right. So what you just said, actually, I love more than anything in the world, because I don't believe the customer is always right. And I believe that we are that in many cases we're partnerships and we're working in a partnership, and so it's about mutual respect, not about me bending over for you, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that how did you, as because were there times as part of your career, has this been a conversation that you've had with people about the boundary being like I'm drawing a boundary, it's totally fine, but the mistaken belief that exists in many people's minds that because we're paying you money, you should really just say yes to everything we ask you to do. Have you ever had that circumstance, or have you ever had to coach somebody out of that circumstance?
I've had clients who, speaking clients and coaching clients, who don't really honor that, and it's okay because I'm not, I like I don't. I'm trying to think of how to say this. So, if they send me 75 emails, I'll say, I'll respond, I'll respond, or I'll say, this is part of your planning process. Let me know, who's going to be running point or something like that. Or I have a checklist that I send out ahead of time. So I've done it enough that, like, let's say I'm hired for a gig and as part of the contract, I say, part of this is a 30-minute pre-planning call to happen at least 2 weeks prior to the event. Oh, you know what? I'll give you a better one. If they want to look at my deck and change it,
Okay.
because that used to happen. And I'm happy to go through kind of a general flow, but this is not your presentation, it's mine, and you're hiring me for a reason. I want to understand what's important to your company. I want to know what you don't want me to say, because I won't, obviously. And my energy and my experience and the essence of this program is what I'm going to do. So I have I have the creative rights, if you will, to that. So I won't send it to them ahead of time. I won't. I'll review it
Interesting.
with them. I'll
Yeah.
send it to them ahead of time so that they can load it onto
Right,
the.
right. But it's not like you're sending it to them to be like, hey, go through it and tell me all the things that you
No,
want me to
because
change.
that has happened to me, and it happened
Yes.
to me when I was younger in my speaking career. And they would send it back and say, "Can you change this?" And I would change it. Then they'd be like, "If you change this," and I would get really frustrated. And I'm like, and I remember I was actually talking to my husband, and he's like, "Well, whose speech is it?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's mine." So it's just again, it's clear and kind, right? Like, it's just setting the parameter. Like, yes, I will go through it with you. We'll go through it, at least 2 weeks prior so I can make all the changes. You'll get it, a few days ahead of time. I ask that you don't distribute it. Whatever the case is, you learn and then you build it into your agreement. And, that's just what I do.
I love this. So I got to tell you, like, I didn't know where this, because so just so that everyone knows, Nancy and I decided we wanted to do a podcast together. So she got on and we just jumped on and said, okay, let's record. And I did not expect, because this is going to be a gold mine for two things. One, the resilient conversation was awesome in general. But, I get a lot of questions, from speakers, and I'm sure you do as well, wanting to know stuff about logistics. And often, even when I've asked the questions, I haven't necessarily known what the questions were that I needed to ask. But through this conversation, you gave such a great sort of, like, if somebody is an up and coming speaker and trying to figure out how to figure out their process and that kind of thing, your blueprint for this area of it today was really, really helpful, Nancy. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so as we start to wrap up today, I wanted to make sure that I gave you the opportunity to, because you have so much stuff going on. Let's remind everyone, guys, if you have not bought this book, buy it. I have so many copies at my house that I just keep giving away to people, so I just keep buying them. So literally, I've bought a lot of your books, Nancy.
I love it.
So get the book so I don't have to give you a copy.
Can you tell them about how we met, about when you went live about my book? Do you remember?
Oh my gosh, that was so funny. So I read the book and I fell in love with it, and I think I became like really weird fangirl. Just gonna say I totally did, a fan person. And then I decided that this was important enough. So this is actually the first live I did about books, and now I do lives about the books that have an impact on my life because of this one. So I did a live, and I'm not talking about it, and just out of nowhere, Nancy was on a plane. I didn't know she was on a plane. I didn't even know she was there. And I'm talking about her, and suddenly she fucking shows up in the comments and says, "Oh my God." And I'm like, "Oh my God." And I'm like, I don't know that I can keep talking now. Like, I was like, I'm
so
a
funny?
fan, like such a fan. This is so
was so
exciting. And I'm like,
funny.
oh my God, she's going to join in. This is great. It was so awesome. And then, but that gave me the opportunity to invite you to, like, it gave me the boldness to be like, dude, let's do a podcast. Which
Great.
is awesome.
I love it.
I
It's
know,
great.
right? So guys, seriously, I have to say, you really just have to seize the day. Like when there is if there's something you love, share that you love it, because that's how we met.
Definitely. And that's happened so many times in my life. My business coach now, I have a business coach who is amazing. I heard her on a podcast 2 years ago. She's a top 1% podcaster, like in the world, like legit. This is not like a bullshit metric, like she really is. I heard her on a podcast. I reached out to her. She answers all her own DMs, and we ended up working together. And we're still, a year later, we're still working together.
That's
like
amazing.
You got to do it. You have to take the chance, because like I answer all my own DMs. Of course, I love hearing from people. I love it. So
I love that. I love that you answered me. Do you have anything right now that is upcoming that we want to share with the listeners? Because I know everybody's fallen in love with you. And by the way, don't forget, guys, to go listen to the other podcast that we did with Nancy. I'll put it in the show notes.
Oh yeah,
what you got for us, Nancy?
That was a good one. So I have a retreat coming up. About when will this air? Do you know? Like,
you know what? This will air probably in. Oh, you know what? Let's say early December.
Oh, okay. So I will have already done my retreat. I have a retreat that I did on Cape Cod in the fall.
How did it go, Nancy? How was it?
Fantastic. It was sold out. It was like amazing.
Awesome.
So yeah, I mean, I always have, I do some private one-on-one coaching. It's an 8-week program. And there's an application, and the application really is because I want to make sure that whoever is investing in me and my expertise and in themselves, that it's a good fit. So that's probably it right now. I in December, who knows? I'm going to be.
Who knows? It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
I barely know what I'm doing next week. I'm still figuring out the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think actually the key here is actually follow Nancy. Like really, that's the key, because you'll probably be on again. But you want to follow Nancy, and you want to keep an eye out for all the things that she's doing, because I'll tell you, this year my word of the year was supernova, and I know, right? It's just it's been a good word, and I wouldn't have had like the key to being a supernova or doing something big is you have to be able to speak up. You have to be able to say the words. You can't make an impact or have a different or do anything if you don't use your voice. And one of the things that I have always struggled with is using my voice and having the words. And this book changed my life. Hearing you speak changed my life. So follow her at nancymedoff.com, right? Is that your URL? Yep, nancymedoff.com. All of the links will be in the show notes. Thank you so much, Nancy. You were amazing.
Thank you. You're amazing.